Your first time here, I apologize. It isn't always like this. Actually, it is always like this, unfortunately. So that's it. I hope you guys have a good Sunday. So we've been in a series that I've been calling Every Day in Everyway Sacred. And Connie kind of talked about that a little bit in her, during the worship time in music. About our life. Hopefully you're getting kind of what I'm trying to get across to us is that our life is our life, and there's not a sacred part of our life and a profane part of our life. Profane just meaning, where it's not part of, the sacred. That we need to see our lives. Some people don't like this word because it has different connotations, but to see our lives holistically, to see our lives, every aspect of our lives, as in God, in Christ. And so oftentimes we experience difficulty in life. How many have ever wondered, just pondered in your mind, why do bad things happen to good people? Ever pondered that? I think everybody has, and wondered why, and ask yourself just questions. These, I'll use a word that Brennan taught me yesterday, these existential questions of life, of why do good things happen to bad people? And we ponder these things, and we somehow think that we have an idea, or we've been told ideas or narratives about God, that God is a certain way. And let's just be honest with each other and with ourselves. We don't know all that God is like, do we? We don't know. He's a mystery. And the minute we try to say some qualities and characteristics of him, and we stop at some point, we are grossly incomplete and inaccurate in our conversation of who God is, right? We want to narrow him down. We want to say that we know, and that he is only to be known in this system or in this manner. And what we do is we create us and them. Isn't that terrible? Like all over the world, we all have these groups, us and them, us and them. When I think that when it comes down to God, there's only us. There is no them. Because God creates all of us. And in this series that I've been actually working through, like week by week in my own life, and trying to get at least some sort of understanding of what our lives are truly like. Because the fact of the matter is this, is that what we perceive to be reality is just even the Bible talks about it, right? It's just now we see in part, right? Like we look in a mirror and it's like dark and it's, cloudy. So at best, we just have vague ideas of what reality is like. And I'm not talking about things like the reality of this table existing, and talking about, that everything's made up of atoms, and most atoms are negative space, right? And that if this is mostly negative space, then it's not really. You see what I'm saying? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the reality of our human existence, right? I've been doing a lot of funerals lately, and I just did my brother's funeral and so forth, and been thinking about that. And, even my brother, I'm not so sure my brother feared death so much as I think a big fear of our life is living a life that didn't matter. That we just were born, and we lived, and we died, and nothing really mattered. That we want to have meaning and purpose. So many people in that I come across in my life talk about that in terms of their spiritual journey. Just don't know what I'm meant to do. Maybe you felt that way. Maybe you've asked that question. I just don't know what I'm meant to do. And so we're seeking for this, we're seeking for meaning in life, right? In our purpose. I think if I could boil it down simply, right? That I think the purpose of our life is to learn throughout our whole life to learn how to love. Wouldn't you think that's a good definition? To learn how to love? Because when Jesus boiled everything down, all law and everything down, he boiled it all down, he said, love God and love each other. Love God with everything in your being and love others. The purpose is love. And when we've loved, and when we've been loved, boy, that gives life meaning, right? I'm not talking about just the love of a spouse. I'm talking about parental love. I'm talking about love of friends. That we experience that love. The trouble is that all of us, at one time or another, who's experienced broken love? I think we all have. In one way or another, we've experienced it where relationships were severed. And wow, that's one of the hardest things there is. Don't you agree? One of the hardest things when that's severed, when that's broken. To me, the harder something like that is, to me it shows me the importance of the opposite, the importance of love. And so what I've been trying to do through this series, we've been looking at the life of Jacob. Listen, today I'm going to conclude today. I could go on and on and on. You guys know I could go on and on and on, right? But this series, I'm going to conclude it with today's message. And I hope that you will continue, in your own life to ponder it, to ruminate on it. Everybody knows, maybe you haven't been here in a while or you're new here. Ruminating is what a cow does. It chews its cud and goes into one stomach, it brings it back up and chews on it again, right? And that's a great metaphor for us when it comes to Scripture, is to ruminate on something. Don't just think about it one time and think you've had an answer. Or even if you have an answer and you're satisfied with it, bring it up again and ruminate on it again and think about it some more and let it speak to you in new ways. That's why I don't see them here today. We were at a couple's house the other night and we were talking about the church and so forth, and they said something about, I was talking about somebody, they don't go there anymore. They said, well, why did they leave? I go, well, some people, I get it. It's okay. I mean, it doesn't offend me. Some people don't like what I say sometimes about things. And the wife spoke up and she said, like you say, the Bible's a wisdom book. And I said, and her husband laughed and I go, yeah, that might be a good one, But you have to, you have to take everything in context, don't you? Right? You have to understand things in context. And my point in saying that was, and I tried to explain to them, is that everything in there, you have to apply wisdom to it to understand it. That's what I meant. So no matter what it says, no matter even if it's a law, to understand it, you got to apply wisdom to it. Or for example, I said one time, to properly understand the law is to properly break the law. And people didn't like that. But it's true, isn't it? Jesus thought it was true. Did you know that? To properly understand the law. And so law people came to him and said, listen, you're breaking the law. You and your disciples, you're eating these grains of wheat on the Sabbath. He said, no. To properly understand the law, you could properly break the law. Right? He understood that you need to apply wisdom to even the law. And that's all I meant. And so that's what I've been trying to do through this series, is say, listen, I'm not telling you that you can't have beliefs about, your own beliefs. That's perfectly fine. And I never tell you that you have to believe like I believe. What I want you to do is I want you to expand your horizons. I want you to think for yourself, and I want you to glean more from text than just a simplistic, I don't mean that derogatory, but a simplistic literal view of something. Okay? Like for example, I could tell you if I told you a fable. And I didn't say it was a fable. I told you a fable, and you would recognize it as being a fable, probably, right? But then if you didn't know, if you had a certain narrative about what the Bible is, and then I told you the same fable that was in the Bible, there's a good chance there's a good chance that for some reason or other we would try to think about it only as literal. Are you with me? Maybe? Okay. All right. Maybe not. My point is this. I'm not arguing against it being literal. What I'm arguing for is for us to maybe look at it as an allegory, as a metaphor, also, that we can get more out of it, okay? And that's what I've been trying to do with this series and talking about the life of Jacob. I'm not suggesting that Jacob didn't exist. As a matter of fact, I believe he did exist. I'm not saying he didn't have a brother. I believe he had a brother. But I believe there are bits and pieces of the story that if only taken literal, we miss so much. We miss so much. And so where I left off last week was I want to tell you a story of a Yetzer Hara. So it was in your notes. If you have your notes, you can see it. Yetzer Hara. Of course, it's Jewish. Yetzer is Y-E-T-Z-E-R. Hara is H-A-R-A. And it's a 2,000-year-old. We'll call it a fable. The Jewish people still talk about it today. It's commonly translated as, you can look it up online, it's commonly translated as the evil impulse, or the will to do evil. Now, it's interesting because in the New Testament, Paul has, and we can talk about this in a little bit, Paul has different words for this, the Yetzer Hara. Paul has words like living in the flesh. That's his word for Yetzer Hara. His way of talking about it. I like these two terms best for me to explain this Yetzer Hara, and that is this: the will to selfishness, or the egotistical principle, because we all understand, our egos in that sense. So the Yetzer Hara is the egotistical principle, the will to selfishness, or the evil inclination. And the Yetzer Hatva is the good inclination. And so I was going to read it, but it's a long passage. It's found in Romans, starts in Romans chapter 7. If you want to write this down in your notes somewhere to go read this, Romans chapter 7, then on into chapter 8. If you we talk about the Yetzer Hara and you read this passage from Paul, you can see where Paul is talking about this. So we talked about this struggle, right? About Jacob struggling with an angel, right? I propose to us that maybe it's his conscience, and maybe his conscience is God speaking to him. And so Paul says something like this. He said, why is it that the good I know I should do, I don't do, and the evil I don't want to do, I do? He's talking about this. He's talking about the will or the inclination to selfishness, to being egotistical, right? Is to desiring these things for myself. Have you ever had that conversation with yourself about doing something? I shouldn't do that. Oh, come on. You know you want to. No, I'm not going to do that. I shouldn't do that. Come on. You know you want to do it. The truth is this. The truth is the answer back should be this. Yeah, I do want to do it. Am I right? Come on. Yeah, I do want to do it. That's still not the problem. Matter of fact, that's part of the answer. It's part of the answer. Yeah, I do want to do it. And isn't this what we try to teach our kids? We try to teach our kids this. Yeah, you're going to have these temptations. Is the temptation evil? No. Is the desire even to do it evil? No, it's not. It's an important thing to remember. So what we want to teach our kids, the same thing we should try to learn the lesson ourselves is, listen, if you do that thing, play it out. What are the implications? What are the consequences of that thing, whatever it might be? And so we try to teach our kids, right? I mean, it's hard because their prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet, right? And that's why we're there. Listen, I say all the time, the people that do extreme sports, right? How old are they? How old are they? 58? I don't think so. Why? Hopefully developed, right? 18 to 20 something, right? 24, right? After that, it's not that they're not physically capable anymore. It's just they start to think of, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? What could happen to me if this or that, right? And they start to think of consequences. And so that's why we're there for our kids. And so we have this story. Let's talk about this story for a minute, okay? It's really good. Let me just read this to you about it. It says, just as doing mean or selfish things does not define us as evil people. How many have done a mean or selfish thing? Raise your hand, please. Hi. Jan, raise your hand for me. There we go. All right, because I know Jan. No, I'm just kidding, Jan. Doesn't define you as an evil person. And the impulse that drives us to do mean or selfish things is not an evil impulse, right? That's what we think sometimes. Because here's why. So this Yetzer hara, sometimes we take it and we say, and listen, if you do, that's fine. It's okay with me. But we take it outside of ourselves and we say, well, that's the devil. That's the devil, and he's the one, right? And so, because we have language like that in the Bible, resist him and he'll flee, right? But where does that take place? It takes place inside of you, doesn't it? I mean, it's not external from you. It's inside of you. So I'm just saying, listen, if you have a belief like that, I'm not arguing against that or for that or anything. But I'm saying, let's understand this takes place inside of us. It's part of our humanity. And it's the part that makes selfishness possible, evil possible, but not inevitable. That's what's important to understand. And because you want to say, well, God didn't create that. God didn't create evil, so why do we have this impulse, this inclination towards it? Listen, if he didn't create the possibility for us to do it, then the story of Adam and Eve means nothing. Because even before what we call a fall, right, the evil impulse was there, and they did what? They gave into it. In the garden, didn't they? They gave into it. So if they gave into it, it means that God designed it that way. And I think it's important. So let's talk about this legend. The legend has it that one day that the people in a village captured the Yetzer hara and locked it up. They celebrated the achievement, saying, from now on, life will be paradise. No more evil, no more lying, no more stealing. And the next day, nobody opened their stores for business. No one went on courting or got married. No babies were conceived. The people were embarrassed to realize that so many of their activities that were part of their normal lives, activities they enjoyed, they honored, they depended on, there was a certain element of selfishness or aggression in them. Storekeepers and business people try to outdo their competitors as fervently as professional athletes do. And society is often better for the competition. Isn't that true? And they're better for the competition. Men and women marry not only for love, but also in an effort to win for themselves the mates who will validate their attractiveness. If you sit and just think about this for a minute, you have to agree. I mean, just in your own heart and your own mind, not in a discussion, because the trouble with that is you get into all the religious talk about it, right? It will validate their attractiveness, the mates whom other people want. Without a modicum of selfishness and aggression, the world cannot go on. It's a part of us. Problematic, yes, but essential nonetheless. So reluctantly, they released the Yetzer hara from its captivity and resumed their daily struggle with it. And I want you to understand that that's a normal part of our life, that normal struggle that you have, that sometimes gains victory over you, does it not? Sometimes it does. And sometimes, like Jacob in wrestling with the angel, you give way and you have victory. So the struggle goes on. And it's never a once and for all victory that we seek. I'm sure you find that to be true in your life. It's never a once and for all. You never gain victory over something one time and it's done forever. I've talked to people who have quit smoking. My aunt quit smoking. I say, do you ever, she's quit now for like 30 some years, right? She's 84. Do you ever crave it? She said, oh yes. Do you think it's just over? No, it's just I always have to make sure that I keep it in check. It's like an analogy or just a great picture for me when I talk to her about that it's like the Yetzer Hara. It's always there. It's always there. It doesn't mean that I'm an evil person. It doesn't mean that I'm a smoker because the temptation to smoke, again, right, is there. It doesn't mean I'm a smoker. You following me? And so she said, yeah, the temptation is always there. It's never a one-time event. And so we continue with this propensity to do wrong, right? But at the same time, the same propensity to do evil or to win victory over our evil inclinations. And I believe this. I fully believe, as I read the Bible, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about Romans chapter 8 here as I read it, that it's the very thing that makes us a full human being. That without it, we couldn't be. And that's the whole episode of Captain Kirk when he splits into two. And the good Captain Kirk was ineffective in doing his job of being the captain of the Enterprise, because he couldn't make any sort of decisions, and so the two were joined again. And so to be a complete person, we have to, and you have to learn to wrestle with your demon, or wrestle with the angel. And that in itself is a spiritual event, a spiritual time in your life as we wrestle, and as we fail sometimes. Doesn't mean that you're now an evil person or that you're lost or that there's some separation. And I think it's a sad thing that in order to thinking that we're trying to get people to do good, we've told them wrong things, right? Told them, it's almost like with kids, right? You kind of threaten them with things to get them to do something, stop doing something bad, right? Rather than trying to explain. It's hard to rationalize with a 2-year-old who is not a rational thinker yet. Isn't that true? And maybe you found that true too with adults. It's hard to have a rational discussion with somebody who's not being rational, right? And I don't mean that they're not rational human beings. What I mean is, like in times of great grief or something, and you try to speak rationally, well, they're not living in a rational world at that moment in time. And so it's hard to do that. And so this is part of who we are. And there's a writer who put it this way, that you must be tempted or you cannot do good. Well, what would it mean anyways if all of us could only do good? What would good mean? We only know things in comparison to something else. Good would cease to have a meaning. It doesn't mean that you have to go and do something bad, right? It's the potential for it. Because we think that, somehow we think that, and this is again sort of existential as we try to understand God, that God couldn't create evil, but he creates the possibility for it. Otherwise, Adam and Eve, he wouldn't have to tell Adam and Eve, don't eat of this tree. And so he creates that. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us who we are. So that brings us to another Oh, man, 7 minutes left. I promised Pete that I wouldn't go past 11 o'clock. So, you know who Jeremiah is? Jeremiah, I've been reading a lot about Jeremiah, a really interesting prophet in the Old Testament. Tells us more about himself than any biblical author. Listen to how he describes like him being a prophet. He said, Lord, you seduced me and I was seduced. You overpowered me and I was overcome. If I say I will not speak any more in your name, there's a fire burning in my heart, within my bones. I exhaust myself trying to hold it in, but I can't. Jeremiah chapter 20. And so I was thinking about this. I was thinking about, well, because the question I know hopefully is on a lot of your hearts is how do I know? You say my conscience, but how do I know if it's God's voice? Anybody? How do I know? There's a story in Jeremiah about Jeremiah and another prophet, Hananiah. And they both said in Scripture, they both said this, and the word of the Lord came to me. They both said it. And they both said opposite things. Isn't that funny? It's in the Bible, and they both said, the word of the Lord came to me. You know, if I could meet with someone, I'd like to meet with Jeremiah and say, what do you mean? What did you mean when you said the word of the Lord came to me? What did you mean? Because what Jeremiah said, told the people of Israel, he said this. Do you guys know the story? He told Israel, he said, listen, Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in, Babylon's going to come in, is going to overthrow us, right? But you know what he said? It broke his heart to have to tell his people that message. He said, listen, Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in. We have to change our ways or else, right? A prophet isn't one who tells the future. A prophet is one who tells the truth. Not tells the future. He was saying, listen, unless we change, right? It's really interesting if you do some reading on this because if Jeremiah hadn't have couched his prophecy in their behavior, think about this for a minute. I just want you to think about it. This is according to Jeff. Okay, I'm letting you know that. Okay, if he hadn't told them that it's because of the way you're behaving that you're going to be overthrown, you know what they might have realized, they might have thought, a conclusion they might have come to? The gods of Babylon are stronger than our God. Right? Hey, it happened over and over and over again in the Old Testament. When this God defeats this God, I'm talking about the God of Israel. This God defeats this God, guess what happens? They assimilate to this God. Why? Well, who doesn't want to be associated with a stronger God? And so Jeremiah says, listen, unless you start obeying, you're going to be overthrown. So it's not saying your God is not powerful enough, it's because of what's going on, right? Anyways, so Hananiah says, no! So Jeremiah had this yoke on him to kind of demonstrate an analogy of the yoke that's going to be on Israel. And Hananiah takes it and breaks it and says, no, you're going to have victory, you're going to this. And Jeremiah goes, I hope it's so. I hope it's so. He even goes back and he's praying, God, how do I know that I heard from you? It gives me hope. It gives me hope that even Jeremiah, he said, I heard from God, but he's wondering, was it really you, God? Was that really you? Was it really you? And so for Jeremiah, if it hurts you so much to tell somebody something, you have to tell them. It's a good chance. I'm not saying it's foolproof. It's a good chance. Right? Now, if you say, I'm just telling you this for your own benefit, I don't know. Somebody said that to you, I'd weigh it real heavy if that was from God. Anybody ever come to you and say, God told me to tell you? Anyway, go to Bible college. You'll hear it all the time. Girls hear it all the time in Bible college. God told me you're supposed to be my wife. I kid you not. Isn't that right, Michelle? I'm not saying Michelle had that happen to her, but God told me, right? And these girls say, yeah, when he tells me, I'll get back to you. Until then, stay away. But it's all of our struggle, isn't it? But I want to tell you something, friends. It's just an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing. You know? Is that struggle, is that wrestling match with that angel. And Jeremiah is history proved him to be the true prophet, right? That's all history did. You know, did he know for sure? I can't tell you whether he knew for sure. Did Hananiah think that he really was? I don't know. Like none of us know. But history has a way of revealing truth to us, doesn't it? Right? It just takes some time, and it gets revealed to us. And so the struggle goes on. And we wrestle with like everybody's like so happy he's folding his notes and putting them away. Doesn't mean I'm done, Marty. It just means I'm putting my notes away. Now you're in big trouble because there's no notes. Now I'm freelancing. Friends, here's the thing. If anybody tells you they have all the answers, run so fast from them because no one has all the answers. And I'm not here trying to tell you that I even have answers. I have more questions than I have answers. But what I want to do for us and with us and together is propose that life is good, that love is good, that love can change the world, and that's the gift God has given us. He's also given us the if you will, the Yetzer Hara. He's given it to us. Because it's what makes things great, what makes things possible. I would say this, I would even say the Yetzer Hara is our friend, Because when we struggle and when we wrestle with an angel or a demon, and when we win victories and when we overcome, that sense of that we all desire to be thought of as good, that I want to be good. I want to be loved, and I want to love. And I think it's our journey. And if I could say one thing to you who struggle, is stop looking for a answer. Stop looking for a purpose. And understand that the purpose is your life. That's your purpose. It's your life. What will you do with it? How will you live? How will you love? Who will you love? And how can we, as humankind, make this world a better place, right? Y'all know the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, holy is your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in you. That's what he desires for us. And so the struggle goes on. The struggle goes on. And we be there for one another as is appropriate to help each other in the struggle. Agreed? Let's stand. Father, we're grateful for a time that we could come here freely and discuss and talk about and wonder and ponder and question and wrestle with all this stuff because it's the stuff of life. So we thank you for life. Thank you that you first loved us, that makes everything possible, that makes our love possible. Help us to wake up to the truth. To live in love is to live in you. Your word says that. Help us to discover that each and every day we live. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, friends. Have a great day.